Summer's End, Part 1. The Brick. There is a brick on the roof of my porch. I can see it through the misted glass and sheer curtains of the bathroom window while I'm toweling off from the shower. Not so much a brick as a piece of a brick, lying there on top of a layer of melting snow. It wasn't there yesterday. I know that because there was a bird, and I would have noticed if it had been standing on the jagged edges of a broken brick. This is my house, after all. I tend to pay attention when I see it falling apart. I don't know why the presence of that little piece of hardened red clay stopped me in my tracks. But even though my toes are freezing and my hair is dripping water onto the bath mat, all I can do is stare at the brick. Maybe it's because I had a long day of work yesterday, and the shower hasn't done a good job at waking me up. Or because, against the white of the snow-covered roof, it looks like a floating comma, like the breath between words. It's been almost a year since I bought the little house on Highland Road. At the time, it felt like an adventure. Now, it feels like a home, and I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that. I can walk from my room to the kitchen at night without turning on the lights, reach for a glass of water, drink it in silence but for the yowling of one of the cats, and return to bed without tripping. I know where the creaky floorboards are, and to turn the tap on slowly because the washer is missing, and if I'm not careful, cold water will spray everywhere. The house is a rectangular brick block. During closing, the insurance agent laughed and called it one of those houses that you can't knock over even if you try. It sits on a quarter-acre of lush land that the neighbors wish I kept more contained than I do, but that reminds me of the forest and jungles of my childhood. There are 3 bedrooms and an extra living room in the basement that I've converted into a 4th. I've filled them all with friends, and through them, laughter tumbles out my windows almost every night. I've never walked into my house and not found at least 1 or 2 unexpected guests drop by for dinner. It's as if the house has a gravitational pull all its own, and the longer I live here, the more people find their way to my door. Somehow, I've become the ringleader of our merry gang. I'm the one they come to when they need a place to go, when their hearts are broken, or their pantry's empty, or when they feel stuck and need advice. We are a home of broken toys and lost puzzle pieces, of fallen bricks lying in the snow. Water is soaking the bath mat now. My hair is getting too long to be strictly rational, but it's my one concession to vanity in a job and life that has stripped me of most. Being a chef is hard work, even more so as a woman, and doubly so in a startup at the age of 24 with severe chronic health conditions piling up. My nails are cut short and haven't seen polish in years. My makeup drawer is virtually untouched, and all my shirts have either grease stains or dust. My hair, down to the small of my back now, is the one thing I haven't recklessly chopped off for my job, although I threaten to weekly. Right now, it's just a cold mass on the back of my neck, but the brick is still there. I have the almost violent urge to open the window, flooding the room with frigid cold air so that I can reach out and pick it up off the roof. I don't. I hate the cold, always have, which is probably why my parents were so perplexed when I told them I wanted to buy a house in Pittsburgh, PA. Instead, I walk the 3 steps to my room and pull on my bathrobe. Felix, the long-haired orange fluff of a cat who claimed me as his own 2 years ago, jumps up on my bed, thinking it's time for treats. I started giving him treats at bedtime when I first brought him home from the animal rescue. He was refusing to eat anything not given from my hand. Now he's a glutton and thinks anything that is mine is his, that he deserves treats for being anywhere near the bed. I give him treats. I cannot resist those eyes. My friends tease me for spoiling the cat rotten, and they are absolutely correct. He curls around my legs, purring, as I bend over to tousle dry my hair. From downstairs, the smell of beef and toasting bread flowed up to me, entwining with the muted voices of my friends. As a group of food service workers, we never have the night off, so our compromise is lunch. Lunch is our meal together, and since we usually wake up closer to it than breakfast, it is usually also the first meal of the day. Tobias, whose relationship with mornings can best be described as actively antagonistic, will be drinking tea, trying to banish the sleep from his mind. Ailish is cooking. I can tell because her food smells different than mine, a little more onion and caramelization, a little less citrus. She's been my right-hand woman in the kitchen for several months now, and we've spent whole evenings talking about the why, not just the how, of food. The kitchen is the heart of every home, but it is more than that in this one. It is the lungs, the liver, it's the joints and the calluses, it's the veins through which we move and the muscles that hold us together. My first memory is of food. It was a birthday cake, yellow sponge with fresh peaches, whipped cream, and shaved chocolate. I'm not sure if I remember the cake or the picture of me blowing out the candles, which hung on my parents' fridge for over a decade, but I can still remember the scent of it. The peaches were so ripe that the moment the cake was cut, the tangy, tart aroma drifted up to my nose, mixing with the sweet vanilla and the cool smell of cream. The fact that I can remember this, and not the color of my first bedroom or my first day of school, probably says all that needs to be said about me. I met Tobias drinking hot chocolate. Moody's coffee shop makes their own whipped cream, which they dollop generously on their hot cocoa. It was a chilly, foggy day in Mendocino, like every day in Mendocino, and I was waiting for a bus. I had been introduced to Tobias before, but never really had a conversation with him. That day, we were alone for the 40-minute bus ride home from high school, and I turned around in my seat with a taste of chocolate still on my tongue and handed him the book I was reading. 10 years later, we are still talking about that book, among many others, and I still taste the phantom taste of chocolate every time I see him. For Ailish, it's the smell of espresso. She had gone through a bad breakup and was drinking an espresso milkshake with a green straw at one of the tables at work. I was on the floor, and it was slow. I knew her through my boss, so I went over and sat down next to her because she looked sad. We talked for the next half hour, at the end of which I asked her to come in for a very unusual job interview, a bizarre amalgamation of evil cooking contest tropes at my house. After surviving a grueling cooking debut without access to salt, labeled spices, or cookbooks, she joined my team, still a little dazed. She moved into my house a week later. It could have gone terribly. It hasn't. That's the aptest description of most of my life. It could have gone terribly, but hasn't. When the drinks come out and the stories start flowing, the reaction I always get is one of hilarious incredulity. I've got it down to an art. I can have a group roaring with laughter in minutes as I give a dramatic account of the time I was handed a chicken on a 12-hour bus ride in Ethiopia, how we bonded, and I named it Ted, or the circumstances that led me to accidentally end up at the supermoon party in Thailand, and how I once had to share a bathroom with a biting iguana for a week. Allegra's trademark crazy stories have become near legendary, with friends insisting that they must be told whenever a new friend joins our usual bunch. They have been somehow removed from me, and I recount them like I do the stories of fictional characters. There is a disconnect between the Allegra who climbed to the top of a waterfall and stood at the edge, whooping and laughing, and the woman I am today. Dressed in my favorite blue house dress and hair braided, I walk downstairs and stop for a moment in the archway between my dining room and living room. The fireplace is lit and fills the house with a crackling warmth. The other 3 cats are sprawled on the couches, puffs of white and black, orange and tabby. Ailish is finishing the stew she has been working on, the one that takes a whole bottle of red wine and makes me think of tree roots, buried deep below the frost. Tobias is doctoring up his nth cup of chai, talking enthusiastically about potatoes. He turns to me and asks our catchphrase question. Allegra, why are potatoes delicious? Micronutrients, I respond by rote. It's an old joke, like most of our jokes. It's not even funny, at least not to anyone but us. We have been too close for too long to talk in anything but memories. Lunch is almost done, but I think this still needs zing. I think the gluten-free flour messed with the end flavor a bit. Ailish calls me over. I walk into the kitchen, taste, add a pinch of this and a pinch of that, have her taste it. She nods. She understands what I did and why. We haven't known each other for nearly as long, but we are both fluent in food. Just as we are reaching for our bowls, Gabe shows up from next door. He adopted us as much as we adopted him when I bought the house next door. Even though his front stoop is 20 feet from mine, he sleeps on our couch most nights he's home from college. I've watched him move from teen to adult in just the years I've lived here, and like to think that we've been somewhat responsible for corrupting him. No one even blinks when he walks into the kitchen. We just hand him a bowl. It's too chilly to sit at the dining room table. Not actually cold, but the refracted cold of seeing snow and ice outside the windows. The couches are warm, and the TV has already been queued up to the show of choice these days. It's Monday, which means no one has to work. It's the day when we are just friends, not co-workers. It's my favorite day. I love them. In fact, I am near overcome with how much I love this life I've built from odds and ends of bricks, sticks and stones, stories and leaps of faith. It occurs to me that I can see myself in that piece of brick on the roof. I remember feeling that way, broken off from what made me who I was. The stories I tell are adventures to most, but to me, they were real, and most of them were scary, and above all, lonely. I still feel that isolation sometimes, even when I am surrounded by people who bring me joy. Those who hear me tell my tales are often envious or wistful, and it is hard to know how to respond, for how could I not encourage others to do what I did? Travel the world by yourself. Go. Don't be afraid. Don't have a destination. Just go. All you need is a backpack, a little bit of cash, and a whole lot of daring. It's easier than you think. But don't be surprised when you bring back souvenirs. You'll catch a travel bug that doesn't have a cure, and it will eat at you every day, no matter how much you feed it. You'll bring home pounds of memories, but tucked in there, hidden from customs, will be the contraband. The scars. The whispering voices that you only hear when you have nothing left to hide behind, alone and in the dark. The tan lines will fade, but the self-discovery won't, and no one tells you how hard it is to live with yourself once you've met. You'll have the time of your life, see things you never imagined, taste astonishing food, and meet incredible people. You'll grow into the space between one destination and another, and, as a side effect, leave bits of yourself behind, the result of which they never tell you. You will be split in in dozens of directions. You will know that the possibilities are endless, which means that choosing any one of them means giving up all the others. Perspective. That is what I gained most of all. It was this perspective to realize that the Allegra from my stories was running away. She ran and ran from a fear she didn't know formed the core of her. Sometimes I still feel the urge to run, and on those days the panic overwhelms me, and I lock myself in my room, in my beautiful little house, and cry until the world goes blurry at the edges because I can't run anymore. I've built myself a cage with deliberate intent, a gentle one, a necessary one because I realized that I would never stop, that I would run until I had left behind everything that scared me, and in doing so, I'd leave behind all those who loved me as well. But was there a time before it began, before the sense of home was unachievable but by sheer force of will? I've been asking myself this since I sat, exhausted and wet, on a beach in Thailand. Just like formulating a new recipe, self-discovery takes a few tries. I sat there for hours, just looking out over the sky, my hands throbbing under layers of bandages, the tide washing in around my feet. The answer I finally reached made me laugh out loud. It made me get up and go back to my hotel, to my biting iguana and jogging tarantula bill, and the perverted monkey outside my window, knowing everything would be all right. It should have been something deep and meaningful, but it was just a simple realization, a memory that I had mostly forgotten. It reached out to me from my childhood, like a little voice whispering in my ear. I blame it on the salted pig's foot.